Wondering what life is really like on Canada's wild and crazy West Coast? This podcast is all about the people, the places, and Vancouver Island time. Together, we'll explore this island paradise, a combination of ocean, city, and country living. We'll meet the fabulous locals such as the Fudge Fairy and the Chicken Lady, who have chosen Victoria and Vancouver Island as their home. And we'll learn what makes this place unique and special to those who live here. And now, your host of Vancouver Island Time, Jane Johnston.
Hi, everybody. It's Jane Johnston from Vancouver Island Time. I'm here with Pam Thompson. We're going to be talking about the city of Victoria and specifically the James Bay community. Pam moved here last year and she just loves it. So she wanted to highlight this area of the city. She's also the founder of Creative Life Coaching, and you can find her online at Pamela-Thompson.com. And her business is business and professional coaching with organizations in helping them embrace change and learning to live and thrive in life and business. Would that be a good way of describing you?
Yeah, that's great, Jane.
Okay, so stay tuned. And if you want to watch us, we're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, we're on TuneIn, Stitcher, and iTunes, and obviously EWN Broadcast Network. So tune in and we'll talk to you soon. All right, so I'm here with Pamela Thompson, and we're going to be focusing on James Bay, which is a downtown area right near the core of the harbor. It's a popular area. In the past 10 years, it's really come up in style, and I'm seeing a lot of renovations happening in condos. So you moved here permanently last year. So tell us, where did you come from? Like, what's your background? How did you end up in Victoria of all places? Because I know you've been all around the world. And what do you love about living here? That's many questions to answer.
Yes, it is.
So,
well, I'm going to start with what I love about living here, Jane. Well, you can look at the park. The people who are watching can see what beauty surrounds us. And the Japanese actually have done longitudinal studies to show that when we walk in forests and amongst trees, it reduces our blood pressure, reduces our heart rate, and increases the number of natural killer cells our body produces. So strengthens our immune system, in fact. And so walking in a park, whenever I feel stressed and I just want to chill a little bit more, I come to this park. And I marvel at the beauty, and I just walk amongst the trees, and I feel so relaxed and centered and grounded. So I different times of the year, it really varies. When you come here in the spring, you've got different blossoms. When you come here in the fall, so it's just a very beautiful place to be. So this is one of the reasons I love Victoria so much. The other thing is the proximity to the ocean. We live in James Bay. Our townhouse is 10 minutes walk from the inner harbor, 10 minutes walk from Dallas Road and the ocean, and 10 minutes walk from Beacon Hill Park. So that's pretty sweet.
And we're in Beacon Hill Park. The other thing I like about Beacon Hill Park is it's really attractive for all ages. So I'm seeing people walking around with wheelchairs, so it's very accessible. There's also the kids park, the play park, and then the petting zoo for that age. And then they have a lot of sports around here too. And you'll see from the pictures that we're sharing that it's absolutely gorgeous. As Pamela's saying, just the blossoms here. What about where do you? So since you live in the community, where do you go to eat your meals and restaurants and stuff that you love?
Okay, that's a tough one because there's so many, like within about 10 minutes walk from here, there's like so many. We really like Il Covo, which is an Italian restaurant close to Fisherman's Wharf. And it's kind of like a little hideaway because you can go inside and you get this totally different atmosphere from sitting out on the patio. So we really like that. And the food is awesome. And the wine too. Of course, for those of you who like wine. And then there's Nourish, which is a lovely place to meet people for lunch, a very organic food place in a beautiful old house. So very relaxing, very good food. I also find Be Love is kind of fun. It's not quite in James Bay, but it's close, and that's a fun place to meet folks. And yeah.
What about, do you ever go to the Lure or any of those restaurants in the hotels around the area? Because there are a number of hotels that surround the harbor.
Yeah, I can't say we frequent them, but we have been to them. And the Blue Crab, certainly for seafood, is awesome. And the view is spectacular as well. So, yeah, a variety of places. We like to cook too, Jane. You know, we're foodies, so we like to cook as well. So it's not like we go out every week.
My husband considers foodie to be a pejorative term, but I don't. So where do you get your ingredients? And like best place for seafood? I know there's a fabulous one in James Bay.
There is. And I'm just blocking on the name of it. It's right across from this park, and it's called...
Right near Fisherman's Wharf.
It's right near Fisherman's Wharf, exactly. And can you tell me what the name is?
I can't remember it, but it's okay. Whatever, we'll figure it out. Okay, so seafood from there.
And then we're within 5 minutes walk of Thrifty's, really good place, and a Red Barn. So wonderful access. Plus, I do yoga. I do yoga at least 3 times a week at a studio, and there's an awesome Studio One yoga, like again, within 5 minutes walk of where we live. So it's very accessible. Another reason Alan and I really like living here is the ability to walk everywhere. One of the reasons we chose James Bay and we rented initially was because Alan wanted to be able to walk to work, and it's about 20 minutes walk to work from where we live. And we had an awesome view. We came from the Okanagan Valley, and that was our dream home, and we thought we were going to be there forever. And we lived between Kelowna and Vernon, and then out of the blue, Alan was headhunted off LinkedIn and offered a really good position here. Too good to turn down. So he came here a couple of years ago, and we officially moved here a little over a year ago, but didn't move into our house until November. And really appreciated all the help, Jane, that you gave us finding a place. Jane is amazingly patient, and she really understands what you want. And and we saw so many places. And finally, we found the place.
Well, we found the place that was perfect for you, so that's what's important. But okay, so let's get back to Victoria. So I actually want to talk about everywhere else you've lived in the world. And how did you end up coming back to Canada and choosing Victoria? I know because of work for Alan, but even Kelowna. How did you end up back in BC?
Well, that's an interesting question. As you've said, I've had the opportunity to live and work all over the world in places people might not want to go, like Afghanistan, Pakistan, Nigeria, Colombia, and even Russia after the wall came down. I was there for a short space of time. What I believe is that BC is one of the most beautiful places on earth. And I lived in Vancouver many years ago, so I've lived on the coast before. I never thought I would live on Vancouver Island, but having been here for now about a year and a half, I realized the access to so many things. We love nature and being in nature. We're fairly active. We kayak. So we can just go to the inner harbor and put in, or go to Clover Point, one of the points close by, and paddle up to Gonzales Beach or one of the nearby beaches. We also have kayaking trips, for example, planned to the Broken Islands, which is close to Euclid and Tofino this summer. So we're going to do some camping and some kayaking. We cycle. If you just want to go for a picnic spontaneously one evening, you can get a chicken or throw some cold cuts into a bag and come to Beacon Hill Park and find a little place to sit down and eat. So we love that.
One of the big things that happens, well, we're right near the legislature, so that's one of the big things in the area. But the other big thing is the Times Colonist 10K that happens every year. And so people do a progressive training for, I think it's 13 or 14 weeks, and then they come here. How crazy is it down here? Because I think there are over 10,000 people that come and run, and they run along Dallas Road. And around the park. How crazy is it down here? Is it hard to get in and out, do you find? Because there are some other activities, Canada Day and all of that happen around here.
That's a good point. I think if you plan to be moving around on days like that, around major events, you probably want to get out sooner rather than later, because they do block off the roads, which is, a safe thing to do for the bike races and other events you've mentioned. That said, where we live, which is a small street, Perry Street, it's kind of like quite in the heart of James Bay. It's very quiet there. So stuff can be happening. We might hear the pipes but really we're only 10 minutes away from the Inner Harbor and 10 minutes from Dallas Road. And yet it really feels like a sea of tranquility. So really we find it really doesn't bother us that much. And a lot of times we stay around. And if we want to take in the events, we'll walk down to the ocean. We'll walk to the Inner Harbor. So it's not an issue for us. Oh, yeah.
What about like in the harbor? Do you ever go down at night? It changes. This city changes a lot from summer to winter, the season. So there's a lot going on in the summer. So tell us about that.
Well, what I love is I love the lights on the Legislative Building. They light it up, and around Christmas they actually change the lights. So normally it's just all white lights, and then they change it to add some red and green to make it more festive. And whenever I walk, when I'm coming back from down Government Street, which is an awesome, very old street, that's a mall, a lot of it. When I walk back past the Empress and, I'm on the bridge, walking past the Inner Harbor, and I look at the ledge, I feel like I'm in fairyland. It's just like, because the Empress is all lit up, the Legislative Building is all lit up, and it's just between day and night. It's quite different, as well as you said, Jane, the seasons, and beautiful year-round. A lot of yachts as well. We're starting to sail more, so a lot of accessibility to, sailboats and places to park your boat if you have one.
Right, and there's also, so just getting around, if you don't have a car, they have the Inner Harbor Ferry, the little mini pickle boats that go around, which are a lot of fun. And then in terms of accessibility to other cities, we have, what do we have around here?
Well, you can hop on a float plane and get to Vancouver really fast. I haven't done it yet. We've got ferries that go to Port Angeles and different parts of the States. So again, you just walk down to the Inner Harbor. The bus is on Douglas Street, Capital City bus lines. You can hop on a bus and you can take a Wilson's bus right to Vancouver if you don't want to drive. And also access to Up Island if you don't want to drive the Malahat, which is a bit scary for some folks. And yeah, there's amazing public transit, I would say. And if you want to come here as a tourist, there's these hop-on, hop-off tour buses that are, many of them double-deckers, so you kind of feel like you're in Britain.
Well, we are one of the colonies,
Too true. Yeah, there's definitely a British flavor with, high tea at the Empress if you wish, and the James Bay. There's the old James Bay Inn, but there's also a tea place in James Bay that's very British, where you can have tea and scones. So yes, there's a lot of Victorian houses as well, old Victorians that you see that some of them, really renovated and done up beautifully. And so I love the variety too, the variety of architecture in James Bay.
There are a lot of heritage designated homes it's actually one of the most populous areas for heritage designated homes. So that would be like late 1800s to early 1900s. And so people are encouraged to preserve the exterior of the house. They can do whatever they want with the interior, just so you know. And they get funding for the exterior. A lot of people consider that a burden, but it's actually a benefit if you do get it heritage designated. Do you find, so in the winter, we're looking at the local population. In the summer, it expands a lot, and there are a lot of hotels in the area. Do you find any issue with the transient population?
No, I wouldn't say so. I think, it's a beautiful city. You can see why people want to come here. I know it's an issue to find places now. For example, townhomes. There's not a lot of townhouses in James Bay, and they're trying to build some more. And the cost is definitely going up.
Yeah, well, we're in prime territory. Yes. There's a focus now to subdivide and then increase density with condos. So right near where you live, there's a new condo and sort of a work-live place. Do you know anything about that?
Oh, you mean the Capital City Park? I know a bit about it. I know they've combined residential with office space, so commercial space, as well as they're going to have a park, and there's a library that's recently opened up, which is great. Again, within 10 minutes walk away, a public library.
And there's also a community health center.
Yes. Okay. I haven't. Yeah. But there's a lot of things accessible. That's another reason why we like it here. It's like there's different coffee shops, there's banks, there's dry cleaners, there's pretty well anything that you want here, and you don't have to get in your car to access them.
Yeah, and when you consider us to other cities, like I'm just thinking I originally came from Toronto, and I fell in love with Victoria like you did as well. But there's, for the price, for what, you pay to live where you live, it's an incredible deal, right? For a capital city in a province.
Yes, definitely is. It is, Jane. It definitely is.
Yeah, and I think you're lucky to get into a townhome too, because with the pressure to densify here, there are a lot of condos here. So some are 13 or 14 stories high. So it's nice to get in. All right. Anything else you want to say about living in James Bay?
I'd highly recommend it. It's for if you love the outdoors, if you love to walk, if you love accessibility to so many things. It's an awesome place to be. Plus, the weather in Victoria is very beautiful. It's I would say it's the best climate in all of Canada.
I totally concur, and I love sending pictures back east to my family in January of the flowers coming up. And they don't love me, but I don't care. All right. Well, thank you very much for that introduction to James Bay. If you want more information on the real estate side, you can contact me. I'm Jane Johnston with the Briar Hill Group at Remax Camosun. And if you're interested in learning more about Pam, we're going to be back in a minute just after our note from our sponsor. So hang in there.
Vancouver Island Time is brought to you by the Briar Hill Group at Remax Camosun, Victoria, where we bring local expertise and global presence to your property.
Hi, everybody. We're back with Pam Thompson, also known as Pamela-Thompson.com. And Pam is with Creative Life Coaching. And she's going to tell us about, first of all, how she got into life coaching. So she is a life and business coach. She's also a keynote speaker. She does workshop facilitation, and she's also a #1 best-selling author. So we have a prime candidate to interview here. Her ideal clients are business and professionals, as well as women in business, I guess, and organizations, and helping them embrace change, right? So tell us, first of all, how did you get into that? What's your background, and how did you get into that, and how does working in Victoria work for you?
Okay, I'm one of these people with a checkered past, Jane. I'm one of these people who basically would do something for about 3 years and say, this isn't too exciting anymore, and I'd switch it up to something else. So I've done many things in my life. Started off as a nurse, got into health education, was an academic, researcher, worked in government at different levels, and have been a consultant both in Canada and internationally. So I've managed projects in places like Pakistan and Nigeria. I've consulted with ministries in places like Afghanistan and Russia. And so I've had a very adventurous life, I would say. And then I've had 2 consulting businesses since the early 90s, and I've done a lot of process facilitation, strategic planning, multi-stakeholder consensus building, that kind of thing, and really love designing and facilitating workshops and processes and big programs as well and projects. And what happened is,
So what did you do in Afghanistan and Colombia?
Okay. In Afghanistan, I was actually a senior technical advisor in policy and planning. So I helped the Ministry of Public Health develop their first strategic plan and built the capacity of internal teams to do strategic and operational planning. So a lot of training, facilitation, but a lot of working from the grassroots so that they would own the plan.
Right, and with Afghani people.
Oh, yeah, with Afghan people, yeah.
Okay, and then with Colombia?
Colombia, I actually got there. It was my ex-husband's an international consulting engineer, and when our kids were 3.5 and 5.5, he got a job there. So I went over, and when I was in Colombia, I didn't have a work permit, but I wanted to work, so I gave myself 3 months to learn Spanish, and then started to put my feelers out and ended up working part-time with a not-for-profit that basically builds the capacity of peasant farmers or campesinos. So I worked in a one-room schoolhouse in the mountains and another small school on the edge of a barrio about half an hour from where we lived teaching health education to campesino children and their parents. So it was really fun.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Okay, so what are you doing now?
So what am I doing now? Well, in 2008, I got trained up as a life and business coach through Leadership University in the States. And it was a friend of mine, a number of my friends were executive coaches, and they said, Pam, you should be a coach, one in particular. And I thought, you know what, as I age, it would be nice to not have to travel so much because, it takes its toll traveling to places I've lived and worked in. And so I decided coaching might be really nice to move into because when you coach, a lot of it you can do virtually. So you can have clients both in groups and one-on-one all over the world, which I have had. And so I got trained up, and then I launched Creative Life Coaching in early 2009. Yes, and so that's how I got into coaching.
Which do you prefer, individual or groups?
I find that it changes. I was coaching a lot of high achieving driven women because I almost burnt out. And so I have a strong message in my book, Learning to Dance with Life, a guide for high achieving women, about how we can learn to thrive in life and business rather than drive and strive. Because what I know to be true, myself, as I mentioned, I almost burned out several times. I have a number of ambitious friends and colleagues who have been diagnosed with different types of cancer and autoimmune disorders. And I know, based on the data, that this is a big issue. So it's really important that I get the message out that there are better ways to live life. So that's how I got into coaching. And remind me of your question again.
Well, I think you answered it. I mean,
okay.
how you got into it. But so who's your ideal client right now?
Okay, right now, I was moving on to say I'm really into groups now, more than one-on-one. I still do one-on-one when people ask, and I feel like it's a good fit. I really like working with business and professional women because I feel an affinity for them. So entrepreneurs and professionals of all different stripes, so to speak, because I've been there. I've had 3 businesses since the early 90s as an entrepreneur, and I've also been a professional person and worked in various areas. And so I feel like I really relate. I also relate, I've worked for not-for-profits, and I've done strategic plans, and both in development and a lot of areas to do with health and social issues. So I feel I really want to do more and more work. I have a workshop related to embracing what I call the art of change, which is a 5-step framework based on the metaphor life is a dance. So instead of being afraid of fearing change, people can learn to dance with change. And so basically I take people and organizations through a 5-step process where they learn how and why they respond to change. They understand what I call the transition journey and the work associated with each phase. I give them tools so that they can work through each phase and end up processing change much more quickly and efficiently. And then they end up being a role model for others in their environment.
Because they buy into it.
They buy into it and they have tools. I teach a lot of mindfulness tools, even coming out in nature for 15 to 30 minutes at lunchtime and doing mindfulness walking meditations, for example. So I give people tools, and at the end of it, what the data show is that when people fear change, they resist it. It takes a lot of energy. Over time, it results in chronic illness, increased absenteeism in organizations, sick leave, and ultimately reduce productivity, reduce focus, and it has a negative impact on your bottom line.
Are there generally people who accept change more easily than others?
Yes, they definitely are, and there's different tools that I use. The easiest one is to have people rate themselves on a scale from 1 to 10. 1 being scares me to death, 10 being I thrive on it. And the beauty of this is it makes them more self-aware. And also, if you're doing this in a team, in organizations, which I like to do, it's very helpful for a team lead to know they might be a 9 and say, whoa, let's do it. Let's make this big change in this project. Whereas if Joe or Jill is a 2, then they can help understand and help support them. So I'm all about support, and I believe we need more of that and more, support to engage people. So at the end of the day, there is much more when people change their beliefs around change and think of change as really an opportunity, a creative process to learn and grow, and that opens them up to new possibilities. They can then have increased productivity, increased focus, and basically a positive impact on their bottom lines.
What I find is, when you're 18 or 19, you think, oh, I've done school, or when you're 22 or whatever, I've done university, that's it, I've done my learning. But what you're talking about really is taking on the attitude of a lifelong learner and learning that adaptation, if you don't adapt and adopt as things change, and things change so quickly now that you almost will be left behind.
That's very true, Jane. And I think when we typically, when we are younger, we tend to be more open to change. That said, there definitely are personalities who thrive on it more than others.
I'm about to go through a big change. So part of doing this podcast is a big change. I mean, a lot of people are afraid to be in front of the camera, but it's a fact of life now. We have to do that. So how have you found, so you do your workshop, 1-day workshop. What do people come away from that?
Okay, well, they have an increased understanding of themselves, how they respond to change. They have a bunch of tools in their toolkit, and they have an understanding of the transition journey, and this model can be applied to any life transition. And a life transition is basically the psychological internal work that you do to adjust to an external change. So they have that, and they have, I think, also an increased understanding of others, and the fact that we're not all the same in terms of how we react and respond to change, and tools basically for their personal lives and their relationships as well as their professional lives. So a lot of things.
So after they're done, they've done the 1-day workshop. So as a group, do you offer coaching for them as well as, I'm thinking there'd be a group of people there who might be thematic learning.
Yes.
And then there's some people who you might have, they might be of the same organizational learning. Is that true?
That's true. Right now, my focus is more on the human side of change, more than on the organization, although I worked a lot with organizations. But certainly there is a need for senior managers to understand change and feel like it's of value to their senior management team to have these kind of workshops, as well as their middle managers and their teams.
So what are the next steps for you over the next 5 years then? What's your change going to be?
What's my change going to be? That's a great question. Well, I'm doing more and more paid keynotes, which is really fun, speaking on bigger and bigger stages. So initially there's a bit of an adrenaline rush, but when I get out there, I love to truly connect with the audience. I do something called practicing presence, where you actually connect with the folks and sense the energy in the room. So I love that more and more.
She is a very engaging speaker. I've seen her.
And I integrate my facilitation, so I really want to engage people too as I learn. So keynote speaking, more and more of that. Selling my book, because even though I did launch it and it made number 1 on launch day several years ago, I still think it's got a lot of good stuff in it.
What's it called again?
Learning to Dance with Life, a guide for high achieving women. But it's not only for women, it's also for men, and it's not only for high achievers, it's really for everyone. How's that?
No person will be left behind.
You got it.
Okay, so
next 5 years, and I will be, doing more workshops with organizations, and then starting to wind down. Near 5 years, I'll be starting to wind down. I now have 4 grandbabies under 3, so I want to spend more time with my family and more time having fun in nature.
Well, the good thing about coaching is you can, travel and coach, right?
That's totally true. Yes, it's very true.
Yeah, for me, my plan's a little longer, but probably the same. Eventually I'm moving more into a coaching role so that I can, over time, actually, I want to learn to be a better realtor. So what better way to be a realtor than to learn from clients who I'm coaching? Because everybody, does things slightly differently. I figure I can learn while I'm doing that. Okay. And any final thoughts about your business and working in Victoria, actually?
Well, anytime you move to a new place, and I've moved to many, it's a new market, right? And even though a lot of my clients have been virtual, and I certainly use social media, I find that I'm most powerful face to face. So I found Victoria, very open, and I connected with eWomen Network, which has been a great network, and have spoken at several chapters, which has been really helpful, eWomen Network chapters. And also, there's a number of other business women's networks on the island. West Shore Women in Business I've spoken at. I'm speaking Parksville at Oceanside next week. So I find really business and professional women, they're very active here. So it's a great market if that's what you're into. And with anything, it takes a bit of time to get known, but you also have access to the Lower Mainland. So I'm going to start more and more tapping into that as well. So I think it's a wonderful place to do business as well as to live.
We also have people from eWomen Network in Vancouver coming over here, so you're welcome to go to their meetings too, like as a guest.
Yes, I've actually been once, and I'm planning to go again soon, and hopefully to speak with them too.
Yeah, if you are in business, actually men and women are invited to join. So the goal is 1 million women earning $1 million. But we also have guests or members called e-males who are welcome to come. And we have one, Joseph Gabi, who keeps coming over from Vancouver. And you can go to Seattle. That's the thing I like about Victoria is even though we're not really a first city, we're a second city, but we're close to 2 major centers and easy accessibility. All right, so that's going to wrap it up for today. Thank you very much, Pam, for coming out.
Thanks so much, Jane, for the opportunity. It was fun. Appreciated it.
If you want to be a guest, there's a link below with a guest survey form. Fill it out, and we'd be happy to interview you about where you live and what you do. We can be found on VancouverIslandTime.com. We're also on Facebook at Vancouver Island Time. And then for our podcast, we're on Stitcher, TuneIn, and iTunes. So stay tuned, and we'll be back. And welcome to the neighborhood of James Bay in Victoria.
Welcome to the neighborhood. We hope you have had some insight into West Coast living. If you know of someone or someplace that should be highlighted in our podcast, we love to hear from you. Please go to VancouverIslandTime.com and click on our Connect button. See you next week on Vancouver Island Time with Jane Johnston.
Do you feel like you're drowning in administrivia? Do you have a podcast you would like transcribed to repurpose as a blog or even a best-selling book? Rhonda's Virtual Office is the answer to the freedom you crave so you can get busy doing what you love. Let Rhonda's Virtual Office give you the relief you need. Visit rhondasvirtualoffice.com and get some peace of mind today. Rhonda's Virtual Office is the go-to transcription service for EWN Podcast Network.